Okay, so today we're going to talk about this theme that we have here. Say to those whose hearts are frightened, be strong. Be strong. This Sunday is Gaudete Sunday, and the theme is joy. If you remember in our Advent recollection, we were already talking about the different weeks, and how we are meant to deepen on certain fruits of the Spirit that we would like to develop, to grow in. And the first week we were saying is about hope. Just a little recap. I don't know if you remember. Hope is when we believe in Jesus. Jesus is the only one who can assure us of that constant expectation for our future, for something good, for something better even. And then that's the first week. And then the second week, we were talking about the fruit of peace. And peace comes when we build up relationship. You remember that? Peace comes when we build up relationship. Relationship, of course, with God, also with each other. And that constant act or gesture of growing in relationships gives us peace. And this week we're going to talk about joy. Joy, Gaudete Sunday. And I would like to bring that theme of joy to this topic here about being strong. Why do we need joy in Advent? Why do we need joy in life? Because joy makes us strong. And the theme that is taken from the first reading today is say to those whose hearts are frightened, those who feel discouraged, those who feel down, be strong because God's joy is with us. So the theme of this day, if you like, the topic is God's joy. Not our own joy, not only, but God's own joy. Jesus said in the Gospel of John, I want your joy to be complete and my own joy to be in you. John 15:11, if you're interested. I want my own joy to be in you. So we're talking about God's joy today. And God's joy gives us the strength to bloom in the desert. To bloom. I like this word, bloom. When somebody says, oh, you're blooming. What does that mean? You're blooming. I don't know whether it can be used for guys or not, but it can also. You're not just surviving. You're not just surviving. You're not just existing. You're blooming. This is something I like to tell my brothers, especially those in formation. Right? I'm already taking care of new missionary vocations. I said, okay, our first task here is to survive. All right. So make sure you survive. Don't do whatever it takes to make yourself survive here. But we're not just here to survive. Second, we're here to enjoy. So once you've found survival in this community, learn to enjoy the relationships that we have. The things that we do, the mission. But the third step is to bloom. To bloom. So it's not just to enjoy ourselves here. It's not just to survive, but we are in life as Christians, we are meant to bloom, to shine, to grow, to be the best that we can be, to develop everything that God has given us, even in the moments of desert. When it's dry, when things are difficult, bloom, bloom. Okay, but for that, we need God's joy. God's joy. I just go to the first reading today. The first reading was telling us the desert and the parched land will exult. Exult, they'll become so happy. The steppe, that plain, flat ground, will rejoice and bloom. I really marked that, It will rejoice. The desert, the dry places will rejoice and bloom. They will bloom with abundant flowers and rejoice with joyful song. So again, no, the theme of Gaudete Sunday of joy, but not only joy, but to bloom. Have you seen flowers blooming in the desert? I have never, I had never until I was preparing this talk, And then I was looking at this picture. This photograph is taken from California, in the deserts of California. Can you see how the flowers are all blooming? Most of them are violet, no? It's like the song we heard in the beginning when they were singing. It's quite symbolic in Advent because in Advent the color is violet, right? Purple. And it's like a lesson of learning how to bloom in the desert, how to find joy, and how to learn to bloom where you are planted. Bloom where you are planted. This was one of the, actually I got that expression. It's not exclusive. I think many may have heard of it, but I was doing spiritual direction before. I mean, I was seeking spiritual direction from this old priest who was very wise. So I was telling him all my complaints about my brothers. Community life, missionary life is very beautiful, but sometimes living with people that it's one thing to work with others who are different from you. Another thing is to have to see them every day. If you're married and you see that face every day, imagine we have 5 or 6 to see every day. And sometimes when you have differences, you don't work well together, things to iron out and resolve. That was in the beginning of my vocation. And I remember complaining to my spiritual director, and he just said these words: bloom where you are planted. Where did God plant you? Don't just survive, not like what I was telling my foremen. Don't just survive. Don't just learn how to enjoy. Bloom. What is God doing there to make you grow and make you more beautiful in that sense? No, your heart more beautiful, to learn to love people you don't know how to love, to learn to live with those whom you feel are difficult, and to learn to make your enemies in ideas. That's what Pope John Paul II used to say. We don't have enemies like the past before, maybe, not killing each other, but sometimes our enemies are those with different opinions, different ideas. How can you make them your friends? Bloom where you are planted. Where are we planted in our lives? Not just with the people we live with, but the situations of life, maybe the challenges, the crosses even. Can you bloom there? Bloom where you are planted, not to remove the situations, but to learn to live and to bloom there, like these flowers in this desert that we see. Bloom, Advent blooming. The first reading continues saying, strengthen the hands that are feeble. Sometimes we are in difficult situations. Have you ever felt, sometimes even physically, you feel weak? It's psychosomatic. When things are so difficult and you're disappointed or discouraged, you feel weak. And then the word of God says, strengthen the hands that are feeble. Make firm the knees that are weak. Say to those whose hearts are frightened, be strong. Fear not. Why? Because here is your God. Here is your God. That's why be strong. Be strong. I chose this song a while ago. I don't know. The Holy Spirit is always guiding me to find songs. I was trying to look for Advent songs for this theme of joy. And suddenly this video just popped out now in the YouTube. And I clicked on it. And it's like, oh my goodness, this is not just a song. It's a story of somebody. The little girl, well, the young girl that you saw in the song, it was written for her. Somebody was asked to write a song for the situation to encourage the girl. This girl, she lost her legs in an accident. She was paralyzed. A drunken man hit them while they were going for a summer camp. And immediately she just lost the capacity to walk. And this song was written about her because the songwriter called her, the family, to ask about them in order to know what to write. And she said, I was just amazed at the strength of this girl. And what did she have to encourage her? She said, Christ. Christ. And she said she was so cheerful, she was so nice, she was so kind, and so she was so amazing. No, she said the songwriter was saying, just so amazing. And she was just so inspired, and the words just came to her so easily because of the inspiration of this girl. You see that she is an example of learning to bloom in the desert because of this joy that is given by God to strengthen us, to strengthen her, to bloom in the desert because of joy. You can see there, no? One idea of what it means blooming in the desert in her case. You see the shoes there. After she lost her legs, her school, because she was a cheerleader, no? Cheerleader, and the school gave her shoes. And they asked her parents, do you think she would want that? Everybody signed on those shoes that she would have worn if she had not lost her legs. And they asked her parents, do you think she would be offended because she can't wear them anymore? And she herself said, no. They thought that this would remind me of what I lost. But these shoes remind me of how much love I am receiving. I mean, if you think about it, I think if it were me, I would think it would remind me of what I lost. But how did this girl, this young woman, find so much appreciation of love instead of focusing on what she lost? Blooming in the desert. Where do we focus when we find ourselves in the desert? Where do we focus when our plans change? When we think that things that we wanted, we expected in life did not turn out the way we wanted? Where do we focus when we feel we lost something? We lost someone. How can we learn to bloom with the joy that comes from God in the midst of our suffering, just as this girl testifies to us? This week of Gaudete Sunday, we are invited to ask for a very concrete fruit, which is joy. The joy of Christ. I put here two passages that we can also pray with during this week. From Psalm 51, King David, he said, give me back the joy of your salvation. Sustain me in a generous spirit. Give me back the joy that comes from your salvation. So it's not my own joy. I don't know, when you look at that girl, I invite you to watch the video again, because maybe in the beginning you didn't know it was about her. No, you just some random person who was there, but it's really about her. Try to watch the video again. How could she be joyful in the midst of that? It's impossible. Actually, last Sunday was Catholic Handicap Sunday, so I was very struck by this. Can you actually imagine not being able to walk? At that age, when you are, you're just expecting starting life, or any stage of our lives. This joy comes only from God. And this psalmist, King David, teaches us to pray, ask God for that joy that we don't have. And we don't have to feel ashamed that sometimes we can't find that joy in ourselves. Give me back, Lord, the joy that comes from your salvation. I need that joy to live. Joy is not superficial. Joy is not secondary. It's not a luxury. Joy is God's gift to his creation to live. And as Nehemiah said, the joy of the Lord will be your strength. Why do we need joy? Not just Christians. Everybody needs joy. Everybody wants to be happy, and they have the right to be happy. It is joy that gives them strength to live each day in the midst of any kind of situation, because all of us have our own sufferings to carry. So these two passages could kind of help us, no, to enter more deeply into the spirit of the readings this Sunday and Gaudete of joy in Gaudete Sunday. So let's take a look also at the reading, the gospel itself this Sunday. How John the Baptist himself had to ask for strength. You know, we think of John the Baptist as this, well, crazy guy going into the desert, strong preaching. He's impermeable to all kinds of suffering, criticism, and all that. And I think really at one point, he was discouraged. He was doing everything right for the Lord. He was imprisoned, and then he was going to be beheaded. I don't know if he knew that. And his life was going to end suddenly. And if he was just 6 months older than Jesus, he would be in his early 30s. And he knew that his life was going to end. And he asked Jesus for a sign of joy. When John the Baptist heard in prison of the works of the Christ, he sent his disciples to Jesus. He couldn't go out with this question: are you the one? Can you sense a kind in the tone of this question? Are you the one? Are you the one? Are you really the one that I'm suffering for and giving my life for? Are you the one who is to come? Or should we look for another? Maybe it's somebody else. Tell me, no? And maybe I'll get out of jail now and say, Herod, I made a mistake. Let me out. Let me out. Because are you the one? Because I'm really suffering. Give me a sign. And what did Jesus tell him to make him bloom in prison? You know, in the prospect of losing his life. I just put here first the parallel passage, which is from the first reading also this Sunday from Isaiah 35, verse 5. The prophecy of Isaiah that says, this is the Christ. Then will the eyes of the blind be opened, the ears of the deaf be cleared. Then will the lame leap like a stag. Then the tongue of the mute will sing when our Messiah comes. So when we see these things happening, we know that the Christ is here. And if you notice, I put it all in italics. It's will. He's talking about the future. Will the eyes be open? Will the deaf hear? Will the lame walk or leap even, no? Will the mute sing? So in the time of Isaiah, Christ was not yet here. And what did Jesus tell him in response? Go and tell John what you hear and see, happening now, already. The blind regain their sight. The lame walk. Lepers are cleansed. The deaf hear. The dead are raised, and the poor have the good news proclaimed to them. What is Jesus telling John? I am. I am. Because John asked, are you the one? And Jesus, by this response, is saying, I am. But not because I say it. Look at what is happening. God is here. No, that's why be strong, do not be frightened, because here is your God. So it's so beautiful. If we apply this to our lives also, many times we could be like John the Baptist. We could be blind. I can't see the future. We could be deaf. Lord, sometimes, no, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I'm praying to you. I'm asking you for an answer. I'm asking you for a solution, but I don't hear you. Sometimes I'm like the lame. I can't walk. I'm so tired with these struggles. I'm so tired of this situation. I can't walk. I'm so tired of myself. I can't walk. And I can't speak. You know, when you're joyful, you can't stop talking. I'm so sad. I just can't speak. You know, that's the contrast between Mary and Zechariah, if you remember. Zechariah couldn't speak because he didn't believe. Mary was proclaiming because she believed. when we believe, when we have joy, we can't stop speaking. And Jesus comes to fulfill. I will open your eyes, I will make you hear, I will make you walk again, and I will make you speak. You know, and it's so beautiful. But this is also not just applied to us. Today, I invite you, as we read these readings, think of others as well. Others who cannot see, others who cannot hear, others who cannot walk, and others who cannot speak. And here, I would just like to do a little bit of analysis. You know, sometimes it's nice to use our minds to analyze the passage. And if you notice, in the promise of Jesus, or rather in the response of Jesus, he speaks about only three things that were mentioned in Isaiah. You know, he's talked about the blind, the lame, and the deaf, but he also mentions three new things here that fulfill the prophecy. So one is the lepers, another are the dead, and the poor. So just a little bit of trivia, you know, in Bible analysis of the readings. You know, normally the first reading is the prophecy and the gospel is like the fulfillment. So there's something that is the same. You know, Jesus is saying, look, I do something from the Old Testament, I fulfill it, but I'm also doing something new. And this is something applicable to us as Christians. What is the new thing that Jesus is telling us apart from the Old Testament? So it's the same things, the blind, the lame, and the deaf. But notice he doesn't talk about the mute anymore. And why doesn't he talk about the mute? Because when I come to your life, you will not be able to stop speaking. This is what he's telling us. You know what? If you are really Christians, and if you really experience me in your life, you will not be able to stop speaking. Jesus is promising us, you believe in me, and your joy starts today. So Gaudete Sunday is not just praying for a joy that's going to come later on, but a joy that starts today because you believe in me. No, you can be happy as of today. I have come already. So throw away your sadness. Throw away all this disappointment and all. Focus on me. You are going to proclaim the good news once you know me and you meet me. That is why we always invite in Verbum Day, encounter Jesus. Pray, talk to him, and you will find the joy today. And then he says, you will proclaim to three kinds of people. That's why there are the new categories there. Who are the ones you're supposed to proclaim to? The lepers. Who are the lepers today? The lepers in the past were those who were marginalized. Those people you would avoid. Proclaim the good news to them. Don't avoid them. And then the dead, nobody was able to raise the dead before Jesus. No? And of course, the poor. Proclaim the good news to the poor, to the marginalized. That is the invitation of Gaudete Sunday. For us who are Christians and who believe in God, you believe in me already. You have my joy. Bring it to the marginalized. Bring it to the poor. Just from Matthew 11. Today, I invite you in our time of prayer to focus on the second reading. Okay, that was a kind of giving the spirit of the readings of this Sunday, of Gaudete Sunday, right? The joy that gives us strength to bloom in the desert. So something I invite you to pray about today is from the letter of James, chapter 5, verse 7 to 10, all right? It's actually verse 7 to 10. How to bloom as Christians. Okay, very nice, Mike. You have said a very nice thing, but tell us how, no? How to bloom. Another trivia, okay? I would like you, as I read through the passage, tell me how many times you see the word patient. Okay, all right. I think St. James is trying to say something there. I will start. Be patient, brothers and sisters, until the coming of the Lord. So it's Advent again. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruits of the earth, being patient with it, until it receives the early and the late rains. Beautiful images. You too, so in the desert, the rains are coming. You too must be patient. Make your hearts firm because the coming of the Lord is at hand. It's very soon. God is coming already. And I continue. Do not complain. Okay, very concrete. Oops, Lord. Do not complain. Brothers and sisters, you know, every week we missionaries, we have a meeting to talk about each other, you know, to tell each other what's right, what's wrong. So now I have to say, Lord, forgive me. Do not complain. Brothers and sisters, about one another. It's very specific. It's not just don't complain about life. Don't complain about one another, that you may not be judged. Because if you complain about others, someone up there might complain about you. Okay? So, behold, the judge is standing before the gates. He is the only judge. And he finishes here. Take an example of hardship and patience. Brothers and sisters, the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. Take for your example of patience, the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. And the prophets are those, not just those who spoke, but they endured hardship, the hardships of life. And who was the greatest prophet according to Jesus? He said, no, in today's gospel, or this Sunday's gospel, assuredly I say to you, among those born of women, there has not risen one greater than John the Baptist. He's the greatest prophet. He's the greatest example that we can take. But he who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. Have you ever tried to ask, who is Jesus talking about here? He's praising, definitely he's praising John the Baptist. You know, John the Baptist was suffering in prison. He was asking for a sign of joy, and Jesus gave it to him. But at the same time, he says, this guy is great. It's okay that he's discouraged. But you know, there's somebody who's greater in the kingdom of heaven than he is. The least in the kingdom. Is Jesus talking about himself? Is he the least in the kingdom of heaven? Well, technically, of course not. No, he's the most important in the kingdom of heaven. But somehow he is, because he identifies himself with the least. And who is the least? You and me. We are the least. You know, John the Baptist is so great a prophet, but for Jesus, you are more important than he is. We are more important prophets than John the Baptist is in our time. And like Jesus is saying to us, I need you to be my prophet of joy. I need you today. And that's why I give myself to you again and again every week in the Mass, so that you can bring my joy. I give you my joy so that you can bring that joy to everyone. So let us look, as I said, let us focus today on, I'll just want to elaborate a bit on the letter to James, in three aspects of how we can deepen on in terms of patience, all right? Patience for joy, no? Christian patience. First, how can we grow in Christian patience? James, or St. James tells us, wait patiently to receive God's rains. Early or late they may be. Okay, you can read the passage again in a while. Wait patiently to receive God's rains, early or late as they may be. What does this mean? Because sometimes the rain comes early. Sometimes the rain comes late. And many times this rain means the graces of God, the blessings of God, the answer of God to our questions in our lives. And sometimes it comes early, sometimes it comes late. So St. James is telling us, wait, learn how to wait for God's timing. And I have a supplementary passage here from Philippians. St. Paul also says, no, Philippians 2:13. It is God who, for his own generous purpose, gives you the intention and the powers to act. What does it mean? It means that sometimes we don't know what to do with our situations. We don't know what to do with maybe for me, sometimes I don't know what to do with my 4 months, in the formation. Sometimes I don't know what can change their way of thinking, what can make them more missionary, to prepare them to be priests, for example. And a human person is so complex. You can't just change somebody like that. And God is the one who gives you the intention, the ideas, and the powers, the strength to act, to be patient, to say it again, to explain. Just a little anecdote. We just had a 1-month retreat. I would say one of the greatest pleasures as a missionary is to accompany silent retreats. Because for 1 year, you are with them, and then you see how come people don't change. You're telling them this and that. And 1 month that I spent listening to their prayer, I realized what I cannot change, God can. Silent retreat, I'm not speaking. They're praying. And I listen to their prayers every 3 days for 1 month. And I see how God is transforming their hearts. He himself. God gives us the intentions and the powers to act. Sometimes we need to wait for God. We need to wait for each other. We can't change each other. Whether in our families, in the community, we can't change each other. Sometimes we need to wait. And God will tell us the time, the things that we can do to help support each other in our journeys, and to give us the strength to love one another. So St. James is very concrete. Now we can pray about that in our own relationships, in building our families, our communities, learning how to wait and to wait for God to teach us what to do. Second, which is very clear enough, I don't have to explain this so much. Do not waste time complaining or judging others. We spend a lot of time on that. I spend a lot of time on that too. But every time I do that, I realize it's a waste of time. And then I realize the faster I stop complaining, the faster I stop judging others, the more I can do things that are worth my time. So there is only one who is just anyway. There's only one who is just. He will be the one to judge. Let him be the one to complain, no? That's what St. James advises us. And lastly, number 3, which is also more personal and more challenging. St. James tells us, offer your hardships to the Lord and continue to speak in his name. How can we be patient? So, the first thing we said about being patient is, of course, to wait, right? I mean, that's obvious. Second, learn not to complain. We can grow in Christian patience. And thirdly, learn to offer your hardships to the Lord and continue to speak in his name. There was one sister that's very dear to me, a nun, from another congregation. She said, when you suffer, don't waste it. Offer it. Because again, we waste a lot of time complaining about our sufferings. And she said, just don't waste it. Offer it. And then it's taken up by God, and he will do something good with it. So offer your hardships to the Lord, and don't stop speaking in his name. All of us in this Advent, I think we feel the call already, As in Verbal Day, we've been joining this, speak. Don't worry about how okay you are. Just keep speaking. That's what St. James tells us. This is a quote that I take from one of our sisters in Verbal Day. She was one of our first generation sisters. And she used to say this, the cross is not meant to be a burden. It is God's dream for your life. Oh my God. The cross is not meant to be a burden. It is God's dream for your life. Think about Sarah Free again. No? You know the girl in the song, the cross. And maybe that can inspire us a little bit. Her cross was to lose her limbs. How was she able to change her whole perspective of life to see that losing her limbs, that cross was not meant to be a burden for her, but was meant to be God's dream for her to reach out to so many people through her life. And it goes the same for us as well. How we can learn to change our mindset, our perspective of hardships to see God dreaming for us there. So I'll leave you now with these questions for our prayer time. What touched you the most in today's talk or guidelines? Now we can just spend a bit of time going back again to what perhaps the way that the Lord is trying to speak to us. What touched you the most and why? No, of course. Second, talk to Jesus about a desert in your life or someone else's life. Maybe in this moment of your life, you're not in the desert, but you know that someone else is. Talk to Jesus about it. How is God sending his rain? Early or late? Okay. How is God sending his rain in the middle of that desert, in that person's life or in your life, whether it's early or late, to make you bloom there? To make you bloom. Remember, the theme is to bloom again, not just to survive, but to bloom. How is God sending his rain? No, that's an act of faith. And lastly, if you like, just to read that passage of James again, and to pray about this in a very practical way. How can we practice Christian patience to bring God's joy in people's deserts? So not only our own, okay? How can we practice Christian patience to bring God's joy to strengthen people in their deserts? All right, so we can have this, as usual, our 30 minutes of silent time. And we invite you and encourage you, if you like to stay with us after that, to have a time of sharing of our faith, to really enliven each other with the joy and the strength of God. So we can have this time to pray.